Alright, we are now recording.
Sweet.
All
I can
right,
use this
cool.
to
So,
manipulate Ben later. Oh, wait, I was supposed to say that before the recording started.
I can cut it out. It's okay.
yeah, this is gonna be one of those interviews. Hey, can you cut out this part where I'm extorting you? Uh, uh, no. So yeah, this is going to be our meta discussion about the space between and the characters and player goals and all that good stuff. I
Sweet,
didn't.
sweet.
I haven't like come up with a very detailed structure for this conversation, so we'll just kind of quiet it a bit. I don't know. I know we discussed it some last time. Um, th- and I guess let me start with some general notes that I had, takeaways from that. Um, One thing that I think is clear that I'm definitely in agreement about is that um, I could have been better in couple specific scenes, but in general, I can be better about. I can be more brief with some of the, I guess, sort of exploratory role playing or investigative role playing, if that makes sense. And that seemed to be something that most of the group wanted. Um, and maybe with the caveat that that's especially if I, if I can determine that the party isn't going to get what they wanted out of that role playing or out of that scene. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
Because that
Sure.
seemed to be kind of the main thing that was frustrating to the group about a lot of that role playing was that they thought that you guys were looking for a certain outcome or a certain kind of result. And it seemed like the fact that I was encouraging the role playing and allowing more investigation was a hint that there was that sort of thing for you to find there.
I think it's
And
that
there's,
it felt like we were allowed to put time into it. And after
Mhm,
so much time put into it, for it to be like, oh, what you wanted to try and accomplish isn't possible, or like what you thought you would find isn't there, it just felt like, oh, well, we could have been saved a whole lot of time and like moved on to something else by now if that
mhm,
had been made clear, or if we just hadn't been allowed to go that deeply into the role play rabbit hole.
okay.
I mean, I've probably said this a few too many times, but I'll say it one more time. Um, I feel like the biggest thing for me is just that we have such a limited amount of time to play each week. We're trying to play in like a 2 to 3 hour time slot once a week. And so, since we have such a limited amount of time, I just don't want us to feel like we've wasted time. Especially when everyone's as understanding as they are about each other's schedules and about things coming up and stuff like that. The things we can control to help things go more smoothly or the time to be used in the best way possible, I want us to try and make an effort to do that. And part of it could be more brevity, with some stuff, but I do think that like there's also going to have to be on our part a little bit balance of like we really like to role play. Like I think there was in the last, campaign, there was once an entire session where we were literally just all role playing time on the ship.
Mm, yep.
And like just ridiculous like multiple times we just role played time between our characters on the ship,
Yep.
doing, everything from making breakfast to playing wall ball to spraying each other with seltzer water. So I mean like it literally is like we could do that once we know a character, once we love a character, we're like, we will role play all day. But
Yeah. Mhm,
I think and I can understand, like, that may be putting you in a hard place because, like, at the end of the day, the goal is for us to have fun, and if we want to role play, it's like, "Okay, well, I guess I'll let you role play," but I don't want to just bang my head against a wall, I guess, sort of a thing. Like,
Mhm.
I'd rather role play in a way that can be rewarding, um, not just for the role play, but for the efforts made by my character. Because it is
Yeah.
effort at the end of the day. Like, it's still effort to role play.
Mhm. Okay, we have a raised hand. Dex?
Figured I'd use this age-old tradition. Uh, I want to say something kind of in line with what Danielle has said, but a little bit deviant. One of the things that some of my players have said to me is to put a period on things. Um, and this goes towards some of the scenes that we're role playing towards a a non-conclusion. Like I don't personally want to hamper any of the role play between the characters because that's all for me. That's all good. That's all growth. Uh,
Yeah.
Mhm.
but I would like to see more of a period put on when we're role playing into something that's not going to go anywhere with the plot or the story. And like we're not,
Mm.
inter characters, we're trying to role play with the NPCs and the environment. At in those points, in those instances, I think giving us a an indication of hey, you as a player, meta knowledge, I'm telling you that this isn't going to go anywhere. So can you, how do you feel about summarizing your character's failed efforts, and that we get a little
Mm.
bit of snippet, a vignette of the character getting frustrated, or thinking that they did fantastic only to find out that they failed, or telling us that our character actually starts to get that impression and let us also vignette into a dovetail or a graceful exit. Uh, the latter also lends competence to our characters at the same time as letting us save a little bit of time.
Yeah. And I think I like that idea in general. I agree with the idea of being being able to be more transparent with the players um in some of those kinds of situations. I think some of the trouble with that idea for me is that is deciding, me deciding for you guys that none of the other things that I could be revealing to you in this scene are going to be important to you or information that you would like to have.
Well, let me ask you a question about that. How often do you feel like you reveal important things to us in the role play as opposed to a summarization at the end of what we've learned?
I mean, my impression has been that I usually do that
Hmm.
versus just summarizing for you guys, hey, this is what you found out. There are times where we bypass role playing and we, if I ask you guys, hey, do you guys want to role play this out or do you want me to do you want to just do a roll and I tell you? Like sometimes we'll do like, yeah, you roll a connect and here's what you find out, and we just handle it that way. But most of the, at least my intention whenever I am giving you guys, hey, here's the scenario and here's some stuff happening, there's something there that I'm intending for you to discover. Um,
So,
there are also other times where, like, I will say with the surveillance thing, that was more of a, you guys, or I say you guys, one or two people in the group very much wanted to pursue that angle in terms of finding out information about the bishop, and I went along with it.
Hmm.
And it was determined that you guys wanted to do a scene and role play it out, and I went along with that. Now that's a situation where I feel a little better. I feel more okay with being like, okay, what are you looking to get out of this? like just straight up asking, what are you looking to get out of this scene? If do you just want to have fun with the situation? Do you want to accomplish a specific thing or find out a specific thing? Because then I can, and that's something that I should have done better with that specific scene, for example. Um, then I can more intelligently decide how much time to invest in it and how far to let you guys go with it. Because, like, if the goal of that scene, for example, was just to role play and have fun, then I think we accomplished that great. If the goal of that was to find out specific stuff, which it might have been more of, then I probably should have narrated that instead of then because then the very next thing was them tailing him anyway, um,
Mhm.
which sort of
So,
short circuited the surveillance. But anyway, um,
Ben,
do you have a response to that, Dex, or do I go to the next hand
Uh,
in line?
no, I wanted to give Danielle the floor. She had a couple shows in there.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, Robert.
I was just gonna say that something I'm hearing here is that like
Right back.
you have information you want us to find out from different events or situations or role playing opportunities, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The thing I think I'm worried about is if there's only one way to find out the information versus if there's more than one way. So, like, a piece of DMing advice that I learned a while ago was like to make sure there's more than one way for someone to find something out.
Right.
And I think, like, when you say, do you want to roll for what you find out or do you want to role play it? I feel paranoid thinking like I'm gonna miss something if I just roll and I have a crap roll
Mm,
versus if I role play and I can ask maybe more questions that I can maybe try and get more information out of that versus just
Mm.
rolling for it. So I think, I guess, not knowing how much grace is going to be offered in the role versus like our ability to find out what we need to find out. Is there going to be more than one way to find it out? Or is it going to be like, this is the only way you would have known that?
Yeah, and I think at least for my part of that, I'm not going to put you in situations where, oh, you said you wanted a roll. Well, there's no way you're going to find out what I had for you with a roll. So, ha, you chose poorly. It might be that, yeah, if you fail the roll, you don't get the thing you're looking for. But then, it's not like, well, you failed the roll, so no more chance to progress this storyline. You just, you know, we end the quest here or something. I try at least to, if you just roll to connect and okay, you couldn't find anybody who knows that piece of information, well, now there you have to take a different angle. Just which I think, or at least I intend to be just the same as if you decided, okay, let's role play out, let me go and meet this guy and try to talk to him about what I want to find out. And the conversation doesn't go as you hoped, and now you need to try to find a different source for that information or take a different tack. Um,
I
so
guess what I'm saying is if we are trying to find out information and we roll poorly, I guess I'm just wanting, never mind. You know what? I'll let me think on things. You can go to the next hand while I think on things.
okay, Ethan, were you raising your hand or were you just doing the emoji?
Putting the emoji under the emoji is just the funniest thing to me.
Okay, I kind of figured that was probably the case.
Yeah.
Wanted to ask since you had put a hand on Dex's hand. So Robert
It's okay,
is
we're
up
just
next.
holding hands.
So I
Just
guess
two
one of the things
bros holding hands on the internet because they're not gay.
Y'all can hear me,
Robert's
right?
back.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, we
can hear
can,
you.
Robert.
Sorry, Robert. I was just being disrespectful. Go ahead.
So I guess for my part, what it is for me is like I would like feedback when it seems like the player group is chasing a red herring. Like I
Mhm.
totally understand as a GM using skill checks to determine the flow of information and even to allow it to alter things or to provide emergent gameplay, we'll say.
Mhm.
However, the problem I feel like we started running into, especially with the session that we've been hashing out, um, is that it felt like just chasing a big red herring, and like I would have rather have just known um, early on that yeah, this guy is it's going to be really hard to pressure this guy, if not impossible. And if it was planned to go that way, then I feel like arriving at that conclusion earlier would have been helpful.
Mm.
That said, like I'm not angry or upset about it. Um, what I was kind of trying to say with some of the way I phrased what I was saying about like these are the establishing shots of the campaign of the characters. Like we're still getting introductions to these ideas and getting things rolling.
Mhm.
And yeah, of course we jump on what's essentially going to be the hardest one on the plate.
Hmm.
Because it sounds interesting and because we're crazy. But maybe just that earlier added feedback of guys, this one's going to be harder than you're anticipating. So that we know either to budget time on this one or to like go with the gut instinct we might be ignoring, and that may be like abandon this deal, give the money back, or something else.
Mm. Okay.
Like later on, finding out that somebody can't be moved once we have established characters and know what we would do, I feel like that's easier to handle.
Mm.
Right now, because we're all still kind of getting a feel for everybody's characters and how we play together with them, that makes the not knowing harder.
Yeah. And
I
that makes
also
sense.
felt like it was harder because I don't feel like we've all gotten as comfortable into our characters as we were in the last campaign, obviously. So it made it harder to figure out what would my character do in this situation versus what would just I as a player. Like I think Dex said before he tends to create female characters for his role playing sessions because it helps him to um, keep himself separate from the character. Like it helps him to get out of his head and into another character. But for most of us, I think we're all still. I still tend to lead to like early on, especially. It's harder for me to decide. Well, what would this character do versus what would Danielle do if she were in that situation? Um, so I think that made it harder as well because it was a heavier decision. Um, though I do think we did learn that like our characters, like in all of the morally gray area, that is where we learned where we draw some lines, and that's good to know. Um, but it did feel a lot harder at this stage in the campaign.
Like I would like the option as someone who's playing the more violently inclined character, even though I don't want it to be approved as an action. Like I would like to feel comfortable suggesting in character, like, well, what's wrong? We could just kill the guy and be done with this whole discussion. we've got the money. Whoever they pick is gonna be like go through it easier. But like, I don't want to tip the entire party towards violence so that people then feel uncomfortable saying no about it.
Yeah.
I think I kind of get the impression that like when you were talking about creating Pete, you I think were hoping that the rest of the party would be Evas and cherries. And instead we have Bo, who just is basically always talking about hurting people. And then Zeke, who if not as violent as Bo, is at least very pragmatic about people getting hurt. So I think that like unfortunately it's a little more down the middle, and that puts Pete in a much more nuanced position than just murder bot teach me to be good. I
It
think
makes me reevaluate the sociopath tendency and say I may have to remove that and or dial it down a lot. But
yeah,
that
I
makes
think
me have to like reconsider the mentality of the character, which I did
yeah.
have kind of settled. So, like, I based him off of Amos from the Expanse series, who is
Mhm.
essentially a psychopath, but he
Yeah.
uses one of the other characters as a moral guide. Like, no, this is a good person. I can tell this is a good person. I'll do what they say.
Uh-huh. Which I don't think that's totally lost at this point. And I
Yeah,
do
I
think
mean,
though that him being a bot also makes some really interesting points to his character where like, okay, I was programmed as like a sparring bot or like whatever, but I think I have memories of being a person, and I, you know, now I need to balance like if I'm a bot and I'm just programmed to be a certain way versus being a human and deciding what I'm okay with doing and what I'm not okay with doing.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I don't think that's totally lost. I think though that like yeah, you definitely have to tone down the like sociopathic tendencies, psychopathic tendencies, whatever path tendencies you were talking about. Sorry guys, I'm losing the words.
yeah.
Yeah,
Losing
I
the
And
English.
agree. I need to rebalance that, but we
I
can go ahead to the next hand.
before you think about
oh,
rebalancing, I
okay.
actually have a thought on that, but I do want to wait my turn.
Yeah, and we'll try to we'll probably come back to that when we get to Dex. I had a couple things to say, and I'm trying to sort of address each thing that people bring up as they bring it up, so we don't get it lost
Yeah.
in the conversation. I think I obviously appreciate all the feedback. I resonate with the feedback that you would appreciate some clearer feedback or some clearer signaling from me as considering like the difficulty or the complexity of things if it seems like you guys are uh, misjudging it significantly or something like that, and if you guys are chasing something that you're not going to find. For example, you were looking for dirt on Diedrich Pierce, and I could have indicated pretty early on, with maybe, you know, cutting kind of as Dex put it, maybe putting a period on the investigation after the planting the surveillance thing to say, yeah, and then you guys go on to tail him and follow him around, and whoops, turns out there's no puppy kicking factory after all. At least not that he goes to. And as far as you can tell, he's clean as a whistle. Um, and then letting that be the clear indication, the the path you guys are hoping for in terms of being able to find dirt with which you feel good about extorting him over. That's not going to happen. So you need to find a different angle. Um, my inclination in this case had been, let them do their investigation, and they will discover, they will discover that he is apparently a squeaky clean individual. He's upstanding and whatnot. And along the way, they'll also find other tidbits that that w- that I would consider other useful information towards their ultimate goal of convincing him to, sign the paperwork. Because it wasn't very clear to me that you guys had hard drawn lines in the sand that you, as a party, were not going to cross. And I think a couple of the scenes definitely could have been shortened up, which would have made that feel less of a spinning your wheels sort of discovery. But I will also say I feel the need to mention, it's been said a few different times by different people about him being an immovable object. Um, I have not intended to give that impression because I guess it depends on what exactly that's meant by I've tried to convey that his stance, his convictions are not, easily swayed or flexed by, some conversation or by the angles that have been taken, and that the particular methods that you have explored so far and had specifically kind of scoped out oracle wise are not going to accomplish the goal that you were after there. Um, but I'll, in the interest of signaling things a little more clearly, he is certainly not immovable. Um, but yeah, um, it may end up being that the only ways to move him all turn out to be things that you guys are not willing to do, either as characters or as players. And that's that's helpful information. I think for us to all be on the same page about, I guess. I think. Oh, and yeah, I guess. Well, I'll probably hold off. Dex, did you have a comment about the Pete psychopath or sociopath stuff and the balance of the party?
I do, but I don't want to jump in
Okay.
front of Avery.
Okay, well, I'll hold off. I have a couple thoughts
Okay.
about that too, so I'll just hold off until you say your piece about that. So let's get Avery then.
So, general question for you, Ben, and this is kind of what my thoughts are contingent on, really. So, I think what I'm hearing is you feel like, or I guess let me just ask this in a more open-ended way. Do you feel like, based on your understanding of how the party as a whole would like to tackle this objective, um, like, is that possible, or do you feel like it's just currently something that, I mean, it seems like you're saying it is possible, but also maybe not if we're not willing to compromise on the, you know, like murder or threatening or,
Right. So that's a good question. I think given the feedback we've had and all that, I'm comfortable spelling that out a little bit more clearly. I'd say, um, you know, as far as um, let me think how to word this. As far as the party being, um, you know, I guess I guess I could say peaceful, like a peaceful or I guess clean clean hands, like no sort of forceful or um like no pressure tactics, no use of force, no threats. So keeping clean hands in this situation, and getting and convincing Pierce to sign off, not going to happen. So what I've tried to indicate is, with maybe various applications of threat or um, force, that could probably be accomplished. I've also tried, there are other ways to maybe find other goals or other ways to keep clean hands and have some sort of positive outcome for the party, but that's all. I'm not quite sure if I'd be willing to spell some of that out more for the group if that's what everybody decides. They'd at this point rather just have it laid out with like maybe a couple of just clear options. Since we have
I'd rather we finished like talking before committing to that.
Yeah, definitely we'll continue the conversation, but that's kind of my short answer to that question, Avery. Is that I don't know if that's a short enough answer, clear enough, but
I mean, I generally understand where you're at. I mean, I guess kind of to the closing point that you were making, it feels like some point may not be the first situation. Just the only that comes to mind at the moment. We might find ourselves in a situation where it feels like you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. And like having that, I guess having an option or a way to like maybe do like a pre-session meta. I know we try and do a lot of that voice chat. I'm particularly getting involved in that, but maybe there's some sort of middle ground where we can kind of say like, hey, we're stuck. What are our options? Kind of like what you're offering, I think would be good for situations like this, especially while we're like early on in like a new campaign with new characters. It might just be particularly helpful at this phase in character development.
Okay. Yeah, I got you. All right. Let's see then. After Avery was Dex.
Okay. I had a clarification that I wanted to put a period on it. Following what you were saying about signaling to us that he's that we find nothing. It was your example where your example where what's his name? Zeke and Bo were tailing him, and you suggested that you can tell us that no, you guys don't find anything. But I want to make a point that there's a big difference between telling us our characters don't find anything and telling us that there is nothing to find. Telling us that our characters don't find anything, especially in a very planned roleplay and or conspiracy oriented group or minded group. Not necessarily conspiracy as in the bad thing, but conspiracy as in always thinking what are the other options, ulteriors, and alternatives.
Right.
We can start to think, okay, well, we just didn't find it this way. But there's something out there. Whereas telling us, hey,
there's no dirt on this guy.
There is no dirt on this guy. I'm telling you guys, as players, react in character how you think you would, if you find out, or maybe tell us your characters don't know this, but you do. Try and, put it to your characters, guide your characters how they would be role played. Keep it consistent, like you should. But people do variable random things. and sometimes make a decision that's a little bit out of character for them, anyways. And Bo might one day say, "I'm gonna read a Jennifer Moon's book."
Yeah, like it might be in this situation. Okay, the characters were intending to explore every avenue, but because I, as the player, know there is nothing to find here,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say that, Bo decides the bit of tailing and surveillance we did was good enough to determine this guy's not as dirty as we thought and move on.
And that leads into one of my second point, which is another point that I harp on about a lot. It doesn't apply to us as much right now, but character competence. Let our characters be good at the things that we're good at. We are very low level characters right now. We're not good at things, except Eva's good at knowing everything, especially the useless stuff. Cherry's very good at knowing people and talking to people. So there have been a couple of opportunities where you could have told Danielle, "Hey, you know what? Cherry's really getting a feel for this guy," and
Yeah.
she's kind of getting that sense that he is not as shady as Mr. Gray may have made him out to be. Um, and giving us that player knowledge that kind of filters into our characters' competencies. Character competence always feels good as players to know that, hey, you
Mhm.
know what? I did that well, even if it wasn't really important,
Yeah, I got you.
Do you want to put a point
Yeah.
on that before I go on?
No, I definitely noted that. That's
Okay.
another point that I was very clear that I could have played out better on was the
Mm.
bar scene drug on too long when I could have much earlier in the conversation done exactly. And I had thought about doing it, but I ended up deciding, well, she'll have some fun banter with him, and she's poking at him, having fun with it. So let her do that, and she'll, find out how firm he is on his stance.
There's
I could have
definitely
signaled much earlier and just said, yeah, Cherry's figuring out that she's getting the feeling that he is not going to budge on this, and he's he's kind of a teetotaler in that aspect.
there's
Yeah.
definitely
Oh,
oh, go ahead, Ethan.
sorry. Yeah, I guess that was my thought. I guess I didn't really have issues with, like how last session played out really or anything and big picture or style things, but I do think kind of like folks have hinted at it is, or been saying that spending time on a thing kind of leads us, or will lead players in general to, think that that's gonna be, or is something that's being rewarded or will be rewarded.
Mm.
Guess I was thinking of that from, or that was a point fellow made in that metagaming video.
Mm.
And I think that's
Well, I
just a
forgot to
natural
watch that.
thing that players are thinking like, oh, if this is getting, the or is getting playtime, if this is being responded to and built on, then this is a track worth going down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think, like you said, it's totally a valid thing to get to the end of a role play or an investigation to be like, hey, that potential lead, isn't the way that's gonna leverage him or or be the most persuasive to
Yeah.
this particular individual. But I think when it plays out for maybe a more extended period of time, that kind of gets somebody thinking of like, oh, okay, I'm in a skill challenge, or oh, it's just
Right.
working the angle kind of thing in the right way
Yeah.
and stacking up enough successes.
Yeah, and and it was like she was sort of in a skill challenge, but I was kind of putting the wrong goal or result at the end of the challenge, different
Mm.
from the goal that she was looking for.
I want to say that there's definitely a fine balance to interrupting role play that you think a player might be enjoying to tell them that it's not going to go
Mhm.
anywhere. But I think that there's benefit to erring on trust the player. Not trust. That's
Yeah.
kind of the wrong word. But give credit to the player to decide once they have that information if the role play is fun enough to continue spending time on, or if they want to, kind of sub narrate their way out of it.
Yeah. No, I think trust is a great choice of word there because it doesn't necessarily mean that you're distrusting the player in the other case, but it's you are explicitly putting trust in the player that they
Yeah.
can decide for themselves. Okay, now that I as the player know that I'm not going to find out the information I was looking for here, I'm
Yes,
going to have a little
exactly.
more fun with it and play the
Exactly. Yeah.
scene and see who knows, maybe something else will shake out.
Hmm.
Um, because I'm not gonna I'm not gonna say, oh, there's nothing useful here. Stop talking to this guy.
Right.
Um, because you guys could, there could be any number of other goals or things that come up later or are going on now that you find something else out that helps.
And that's a
Um,
great point is yes, the player could be just like, well, I'm gonna completely reverse tack here, and like Nero could start flirting with somebody, heaven forbid, you know?
yeah. But
Um, I wanna get to Danielle and Robert's comments about Pete because I feel like I really want you to be able to play Pete how you want, Robert. And I feel like there's a very real thing, player pressure versus character consistency. Um, where I usually talk about this when it comes to players like Nick. Some of you remember him. I think actually, well, all of you except
Yep.
for Avery remember him.
sorry,
Where
one quick thing before you continue, and I don't mind you talking about Nick. Could you clarify? You said player consistency versus what?
uh, player pressure versus character consistency. It's
Oh, player
peer
pressure versus
pressure,
character
but player
consistency.
pressure.
Okay, got you.
So
Okay.
it's that player pressure or like group camaraderie. There's many different ways to say it. Is something that uh is exploited by players like Nick. Now we don't have any Nicks amongst us, but he's a really good example of how that player pressure can work because you get him doing something and we're like, whoa, well, wait a minute, what's going on? But we're more inclined to go along with it because he's a fellow player. We like him, or did at least at the time. I'm sure we still like him
Mhm.
still, as a person. Um, and we're more inclined to let the friend do the bad thing, you know? It's
Mhm.
it's fairly common in social groups to let
Yeah.
someone that you're familiar with and that you share you feel like you like to do something that you would outright stop someone else from doing or report. And that's
Yeah.
where player pressure can kind of let us take our characters in inconsistent ways. Um, and Robert, I don't want you to feel like you need to un-Amos Pete to any amount, um, because I do feel like Eva will be the moral compass. She is shaky right now, but if we can talk out how we want it to play out, I guarantee you I'll bring her around and make a fuss about the morality of things, depending on how things go. I just want you to know you can play Pete Amos, and Eva will be James.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah, and on that note, I think that's an interesting comment, Dex, because yeah, there can be some potential issue with how I guess the players are inclined to go along with something that kind of a problem player wants to do, or a and I guess in this case it's sounding like Pete would be potentially the ideal scenario for Robert is Pete suggesting courses of action or solutions that the other players that all of the players, Robert included, do not actually want to happen, and needing to rely on other players or the other characters, through the players, other players through the characters anyway, to oppose that and convince him of a different course, or just whatever, override him. And I think what I'd say is, in general, I'm okay with the idea of having this tension between different characters' motivations and like moral boundaries or whatever.
It's fun.
I think with the caveat that I guess I don't know how to put it exactly. It's not. I guess well, what I would say is maybe, as indicated by the way that this whole, I guess, mission had started going, especially at the end when Pete ended up isolated with Bo and Zeke, that you're putting yourself in a position where your character is you're putting your character's actions in the hands of the other players, and you're having to rely on them through emergent gameplay to suitably direct your character to do what you want your character to do. And so that, I think that's fine, as long as you're also okay with your character ending up being, doing something that you didn't want them to do, or your character being left to decide for themselves more so than you were hoping, because you can't control what the other players are doing, and so it does put you in kind of a quandary.
I want to caveat that when you give a chance.
Yeah, and so I guess just that I think it'd be fine to keep Pete as a more unhinged character, and especially now that it's been made more explicitly clear, and the party is more kind of rallying around. Okay, yeah, we need to figure out a way to shift the party dynamic towards more peaceful and less violent and less morally objectionable solutions, with the caveat that I do think well, sometimes for someone to have kind of and I don't remember specifically about the character Amos, so I'm not going to comment too much about that, but you know it's very possible for a character in that situation to do something that then has to serve as a stark reminder of why they have to fixate more fully on the moral compass character.
Yeah, and it's like I was saying during character creation, I didn't want to make a character who is unhinged and against the general feel and flow that we've established for the kind of games that we all like to play together. I wanted a character who was going to be complex in interaction, and your assessment that this is a character that could be very externally directed by other players is a very fair assessment. And I think that's fair, and I think where I want to go with it down the line is him having an idea of what Eva would say down the line, or what one of the others would say. It's not that I want him to be unhinged all the time. Just very much in the less restrained, but also self-centered in how he considers the logic to start. Like, this doesn't really affect us. If we kill the guy, then he's not going to oppose the thing anymore. Like, I want to be able to say, make the argument, even while I know that that's going to be completely disproved, or like, well, that's not a moral thing to do, and just have Pete go, huh? What's that? Like, be able to have that side of the discussion, even though I know it's not going to go in that direction.
Yeah, and I think,
and I don't want it to be 100% of the time, like every time.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's manageable. I mean, if your intention is that he will have, he already has background with Eva, and will have fixated on her as his moral compass. It could be the most recent scene that we had where he's sitting in the cargo bay with Zeke and Zeke and Bo, as they're floating these couple ideas for how to exert some pressure on this guy. It could be a time for him to at least realize internally and bow out and say, this Eva was tired of this conversation and left. Maybe I don't need to be here. I should go, because this seems like a good idea to me, but I'm forgetting I don't have a good moral compass. I need to go check in with Eva or something like that, or because it's going to be, well, yeah.
I feel like I have a relevant caveat in a different direction here. The caveat I want to take in a different direction is this is controversial to some players. I would posit Nick as another example of it, but it's okay to arrange with other players. Send a message saying, "Hey, I think Cherry is going to suggest we do this super flirty girls' night with the preacher type thing. How do you feel about that for Eva?" And for me to be like, no, that's not going to work for Eva. It's okay to float ideas to players and to bring them in on the thinking, or to Danielle might say that that Cherry is going to suggest that, and ask, would Eva shoot it down, because that's what Danielle wants. And I'll throw some examples out. We've already done this. Avery has shot things to me about things that oh gosh, did I just mix up names? Oh no. Oh crap, what was Avery's character's old name?
Java.
Java. Avery has shot messages to me asking, if saying that he wants to do something with Java, and I think sometimes assuming that Nero would play along with it, but maybe it was just couched in that language, and I've said no, that's not really in character for Nero. But there've also been things that have been shot over, and had I not had some forewarning, I wouldn't have played along with it in character. But having had the forewarning and thought, yeah, maybe she would have. Like the expressing badgers thing was an idea I shot down immediately, and then later decided, I guess maybe she would say that. But that's my thing is, if you want to have that kind of conversation of a thing that your character wants to suggest, or that you once suggested to your character, it's okay to shoot another player a message. It's also okay to shoot another player a message if you want their character to say it's a bad idea.
Right. Yeah, and I certainly agree with that. I think that's great. That's that can only help and be good. That's been the source of a lot of fun moments, just role playing wise, in this group already. Especially as we're trying to establish and figure out the dynamic in the party. But yeah, I think also for Robert, like, yeah, if Pete, if Pete is going to be a very, I guess, very morally malleable or morally suggestible character, then that's a great case for he, and,
Yeah.
and I guess I may not have been explicit on that side of it enough.
Right. Yeah.
Robert, I think you either need to be okay with it, going through some bumps of a process, or be more explicit with people about how you're wanting him to be directed by the other characters in various scenes, because it might work out fine if people now that people have a clear understanding, but I think it's still probably going to require some poking and prodding here and there, like hey, could Eva come over here and take Pete by the arm and say, hey, we need to talk, or something like that.
I bring it up and I bring Nick into it because he and I had many extensive conversations. He was hardline emergent roleplay only, and
Yeah.
my argument to him was always that a planned and prepared roleplay interaction can create far more interesting story than an emergent scene that just falls flat. And
Right. That just devolves into nonsense or chaos.
yeah, he had a different ideology than me on that, but it's worth exploring because I think we're more on the side of emergent is great, and emergent is great, but we want a good story.
Yeah.
So
and
we
one
need
that
to,
we're all comfortable with.
right.
Yeah.
So we need to mix up the styles a bit.
Yeah.
And just a quick, one quick side note that I don't know if I already mentioned or not, but occurred to me when you mentioned about, that one that we're all comfortable with. I think something that is going to help, and probably potentially could have pushed the whole investigation stuff along a good bit quicker, was if there had been some brief discussion by the players of, like, hey, just to be clear, I'm not okay with us, I'm not okay with us going after this guy in any way if he's legitimately a good guy, or if he's totally upstanding. If he's got dirt on him, yeah, I'm cool with blackmailing him or extorting him or threatening him or whatever. But if he's a good guy, no, we're not going to do that.
Good point. And I think part of the difficulty, Ben, is that I think we've been kind of figuring that out with this session.
Yeah,
Yeah,
goes back to Robert's earlier comment about us also figuring out our characters.
Yeah, and my personal opinion is that that's a good thing, and that was part of the reason why I crafted this scenario the way I did. That may have been something that I should have signaled to the group beforehand, that, hey guys, this is going to be a moral quandary kind of mission. And prepare you guys a little bit more mentally for that, because I enjoy that sort of discovery, and I enjoy that kind of gameplay of you guys figuring out, oh hey, where are the boundaries? Because I was, and I think part of it is me being the GM trying to imagine dozens of different possible computations of, or combinations at least, of things, and ways that various characters might be able to justify certain actions to themselves. And that was getting way too nuanced, and the gray was just not something that the whole party was necessarily up for digging around in at the time, and that's
Yeah.
so definitely. I'm feeling more clear about the direction and kind of how and when to put the group in those kinds of situations. All right.
Avery is
Well,
motioning for break, and Robert needs to go soon.
okay. I would be up for a break for sure.
Hey, Robert, before you take off, can I pull you aside for just a second?
Yeah, sure.
All right. If we're gonna break
Okay.
now, then I'll pull him aside right now.
Yeah, let's do that. And you are still recording just for your
Yes.
your
Were you
vacation.
thinking 5 minutes or 10 minutes would make sense?
What do you need? 5 or 10?
I can probably make do with 5.
Okay.
If I'm not back, you guys can start up. I'll be shortly behind.
Yeah, sounds good. We'll take 5, and Dex and Robert might take a little longer anyway. So
Probably
we'll
not.
do 5-ish. And,
Hi.
yeah. Yes. Hello to your respective people.
You want to hop into sidebar, Robert?
Yep.
Hey, so I wanted to run by you just a quick kind of idea I have, depending on what the party decides will be the resolution.
Mm-hmm.
I can imagine a scenario where the characters in character decide, hey, we need to use violence and kind of rough this guy up or kill him or something. And Eva initially not wanting to fail her crew, going along with it, but becoming increasingly distressed and like obviously distressed to the point that that Pete recognizes and notices something, and then she breaks down and it's just like, no, I can't do this. How
Yeah, that makes sense.
would that feel good for you with Pete? Like, is it in character?
Yeah, because like I was saying, Pete would want to help protect Eva's innocence because he would recognize that as something valuable.
Mm-hmm.
And so he would definitely want to he would probably recognize first that that she's getting really stressed out and then be
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, well, what's the cause of it? It has
Right.
to be this suggestion of violence.
And
And
oh, go ahead.
and therefore start to move away from that.
And I was thinking that it's better than what we talked about last time, where Pete was just immediately getting in the way, because it allows you to explore that initially Pete thinks she's okay with it and
Yeah.
doesn't think much of it until he starts seeing the signs, the effect, the toll the stress is having on her.
Yeah.
Okay, I wanted to put that in our back pocket. Again, like I said, if the group decides that we want to resolve it with with basically a failure, because that's where that would lead, is some kind of fail state with Mr. Gray, unless somebody else pulls something out of their pocket. But propose that as an option for Pete to recommend. We would talk with the rest of the group and say, hey, this is the kind of planned arc we have, and let that role play out.
Sounds good.
Okay. Well, I hope you get some rest and feel better. Obviously, I'll let you hop back into the main channel and say goodnight if you're leaving now. Did you have any other
Thanks.
thoughts on
Yeah.
that before we do?
Just that this playing this kind of character is actually a stretch for me. I normally don't play this kind of character.
Uh-huh.
So it's already a little bit on the uncomfortable side, but I figured it could be fun once we kind of get a kind of established thing going.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think it's neat. I get the discomfort, but I also think that there is definite value in like in you seeing a bit of redemption arc there, or not necessarily redemption, but kind of redemption.
Yeah, kind of.
It's more of a become better arc.
Yeah, an improvement and
Mhm.
figuring out who he should be.
Yeah, I mean that's very parallel to Amos. Have you seen the whole series, the whole show?
I'm trying to remember if I finished it or not, but I've at least seen like 3 or 4 seasons. I remember him going back home to Earth.
Okay, okay. Yeah, that was very revelatory about him and his backstory and
Yeah.
character.
Yeah, and I figure there's gonna be that kind of a revelation at some point with and for Pete,
Mhm.
especially when it comes to figuring out, is he a robot who's hallucinating that he was a person, or is he actually a person who's stuck in a robot? And so then
Yeah,
that, of course, should be a big shakeup.
yeah, uh, yeah, and I want to help facilitate you getting there.
Yeah, because I think that'll be awesome.
I agree. All right, let's hop back into
Yeah.
the general.
I
Exception. So, but
We are
yeah,
done.
everyone's okay now, so we're good. I think Heather's still in pain though.
Hopefully she gets feeling better soon.
Yeah. I was just happy it wasn't anything heart related.
Yeah, thankfully nothing worse.
Yeah, for real. But that was definitely poor Ben. I didn't even get to tell him I was leaving. He was literally like, I turned around and noticed my family was gone, and then I had a text message from Danielle telling me to hitch a ride with Alex and Raquel. I just, because I was already at the van, I just immediately put the kids in their car seats
Yeah,
and
just load up and go.
checked off. Yeah. So anyway,
I'm glad it wasn't a heart thing. Dealing with that with my dad, that was a little bit stressful, even though it was on the lighter side.
yeah. Well, and Heather's 29, so and really
Yeah.
really healthy. Like she and her husband work out practically every day and they eat super healthy, and so like it didn't make sense for it to be a heart thing unless it was like a congenital heart thing. But anyway, yeah, it was
Mm-hmm.
just the kind of phone call that like I would not ever wish anybody to have. So, but
Yeah.
we got there and it was fine. And then later she said, that was everything I thought being at the hospital with you would be. I was like, what do you mean? And she was like, you're like plugging in devices, offering me snacks, referring to everybody on a first name basis like your BFFs. I was like, I'm so sorry that I made the experience more enjoyable. I think I've just been in enough hospital rooms to know bring chargers and snacks. Like,
Yep.
and also the nurse practitioner introduced herself by her first name. What was I supposed to say? Like, excuse me, can you please give me your surname so I may
Your
appropriately
name
and
is
respectfully refer to you? Yeah,
Hi, Miss Nurse Practitioner.
yeah,
After
basically.
they introduce themselves as a name.
Yep. Well, and then like we had been up really late and we had to get up super early to get ready for this dumb wedding that was really just a friendship test in disguise because the ceremony was at 8 a.m.
Was it also
On a
winter when
mountaintop.
it was freezing cold?
Yep.
Yes. So anyway,
Outside in winter?
in North Carolina on a mountaintop, yes. So anyway,
Wow.
I'd been up really late and gotten up early. So like towards the end when they're like, we're gonna send someone to discharge you, I just like, it's my sister. So I just like got on the bed next to her and she was like, "Oh my dear, I knew you were gonna get on this bed." And I'm like, "What? Come on." Like it's been really nice. I've been behaving well. But it basically was like she was like, "I'm getting up. You can have the bed." And I was like, "Okay, fine."
Flappity fleepers.
Sounds like you won.
in the mortal contest of bed, you have won.
Yep. Used to win it all the time
Mm,
when we were kids. So back to square one.
Never forget the basics.
Mm.
So true.
Well, good night,
All
y'all.
right. All
Good
right.
night,
Good night,
Robert.
Robert.
Tell
Robert.
Andrea we said hey.
Will do.
All right. Bye.
Thanks for the prayers.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
For sure. Whoa, was that
Okay.
3 people? Or was it
No,
just
it was
Robert
just
echoing?
Robert with Echo, yeah.
Okay. I was like, man,
Hmm.
I see how it is, everybody.
Yeah. Okay, well, all that having been discussed, don't know. I don't know what you guys want to do next. Do you want to do some, out of character kind of meta discussion of the actual mission you guys are on right now? Or do you want to get in some role playing or something like that, or do something specifically?
I feel like we shouldn't do any role play or any actual
Mhm.
play this session.
Yeah. I think especially given that Pete and Robert are very closely tied, and like his character arc is closely tied to the outcome of this mission.
Hmm. Well,
Um,
that's
if we can avoid it, yeah.
actually what I discussed with Robert was uh, I mean, following from my emergent versus prepared roleplay,
Hmm.
a potential scenario for us to play out. But I don't want to put it forth before anybody else has had a chance to talk about what we want from the scene, from the whole event.
Mm.
I want to get paid.
You mean from the mission or from the scene that you were discussing with Robert?
Uh, from our play so far.
Oh, okay.
So yes, the mission and
Meaning
the
bigger picture
sessions.
than the mission.
No, I would say it's about the size of the mission as far as the picture goes.
Hmm. Okay. If I
I don't think that
if
clarified
I'm
anything. Sorry.
Yeah, if I can try to drill down on what you're getting at, something I was considering asking the group is basically, there's been a lot of discussion of, signaling, spelling out more clearly from my side, and I think at least in specifically this mission, we're at the point where people are ready for a lot more spelling it out from me, so that there can be less role playing and investigating and poking around in the options for this
Hmm.
scenario. Um, so what I was gonna sort of ask is, do people want to take our newfound clarity and discuss amongst yourselves some of your options or some of the things you could imagine trying first, and then maybe then run them by me? Or do you want me to spell out some stuff that I think your characters could come up with at this point,
Mm.
or something else?
I will say before the session, Ethan, you threw out the idea of like maybe leveraging someone higher or lower in the food chain to get the ultimate goal accomplished. And I
Hmm.
did think that that was a pretty interesting idea, particularly like going over Mr. Pierce's head.
Yeah.
So that would be definitely something I think I personally would like to discuss more and see if we all kind of resonate with, because it seems like the closest path we've had to discuss to where I think everyone wants to end up, to my knowledge. Thoughts?
Okay.
I would agree with that. Would that be something that if Ben says it's feasible, Ethan, is that something that you'd be on board with?
Yeah, I'm good for it. I think right now that kind of, or I guess this would be a thing that reinforces Bo's kind of current character arc. Because I think at this point, having encountered the idea of like, oh, there could be, an all right government figure,
Right.
he is feeling the need to double down on his belief that most people in authority, or all people in authority, are basically evil.
I
Yeah.
think
Right, kind of the, okay, great, we found the one government official who's upstanding. All we got to do is go one step higher or lower, and we'll find somebody dirty.
I think
I
that
will
could
say-
Yeah, I guess even then, he's still kind of on that idea. I think he said a couple of times that, like, oh, he's just the boring kind of bad.
yeah, you did say that. Real quick, Avery, I
Right.
think that could work really well with what Robert and I discussed. And then Avery.
I was just gonna say, like, one point of order. I am particularly above Pierce. I'm not
You
super
you cut
keen
out
on
there.
like looking to his subordinates to like, forge
Avery.
signature or do anything like to that effect. I don't.
I don't think he can hear you telling him he broke up.
I guess not. Avery, can you hear me?
Yeah, you know.
Hey, I was trying to tell you. You said I am, and then you cut out for a couple seconds, and then Pierce. So I'm not
Oh.
sure what the core of that sentence I didn't get.
Can you hear me now though?
Yeah.
Yes.
So what I was saying is I am for the idea of going over Pierce,
Okay.
but I don't think personally that it makes much sense to go beneath him.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Could be convinced otherwise, but like it. I don't know. I think it's less likely for questions to be asked if a superior were to come to me and say like, "Hey, shut up. We're going to do it this way." That's one thing. But if someone beneath me were to basically just go against my wishes, I definitely have some questions to ask about that.
I think that makes sense. Let me put forth what I said to Robert and see how you guys like it. And then mix in what we've just talked about. Oh, before I go into that, Ben, are you willing to tell us if going to someone above him, if that's feasible with our current characters' like skills and outlooks?
Yeah, I'm willing to answer that. I've been thinking about it already just a little bit for a few minutes. I considered it briefly when he first messaged it, and then I've been on other tracks. I would say it is definitely. I'll say that is. There's definitely a way to do that by going above him. Um, I think I would need to. I think I need to do a slight tweaking of how I'd imagined the power structure and hierarchy and all of that. Just to and fleshing it out slightly more as well. To put a superior who is in reach and would have the clout for that, because I had kind of envisioned him as almost like an independent, uh, not quite like a not quite like a cabinet head, but something kind of like that. But where the next person above him is like practically the like basically the whatever mayor or governor of the area. But I think even that, I could make that work, because you guys do have um, skills, and you do also have um, you have a down payment, and you have potential access to resources beyond your own. Um, so yeah, I think I'll say, without going into very specific details, I think I'll say that yeah, there's definitely a way you guys could pull that off.
All right, so let me put forth what what Robert and I talked about, and that was that the characters suggest we rough him up. Someone suggests it, whether it be Pete or Bo. Basically, it's put forth against the protests of Cherry, perhaps, and Eva makes a decision that, okay, we're going to go do that. Over the course of our time preparing and well, preparationing. I thought I had two words there. For that violence, Eva is getting more and more stressed in ways that Pete is particularly insightful to, and she's freaking out about what they're about to do. He comes and talks to her, and she basically breaks down and says, "No, I can't do this." Cue Pete rejecting the idea, and basically the group pivoting on Eva's inability to commit to violencing up a good man.
I
That's
can
what.
picture it now. Bo like sharpening a knife and like laughing while he mimes and describes something he's gonna do to Pete and Zeke just kind of nodding along, and going, and Pete, analyzing and going, okay, interesting technique there, and then noticing, in the corner of his eye, like Eva looking very distressed off on the side, doing her whatever her nervous tick behavior is.
I've kind of
I like it.
established it as I don't want to say moaning because that sounds awful. Groaning. I
Yeah.
watched a series of Taskmaster in which one of the comedians does this thing where he's talking and and I've done that with her quite a lot when she's nervous or uncomfortable with something.
Yeah.
So it's complete tangent. That was irrelevant. You'll hear it when it comes out. But
Yeah.
does that kind of sound like a solution to our current out of character crisis about how to get our characters on the right path? Or on a path that we want them on, I should say. Maybe not the right path, but on a path that we want them on.
In the 41st century, there are no right paths.
Everyone is quiet. You all hate it.
No, I'm good with that.
I'm gonna say, I think it's a lot of thinking going on. You gotta call out somebody specifically. Danielle, what do you think about that? Oh, Danielle just fell asleep. That's what that is.
Oh, I
I guess I
see.
was also thinking on my portrayal of Bo, and I guess realizing
Ben made
I
him
don't know.
out to
I guess there's
look way
kind of
worse than you do.
do what?
I think Ben made him out to look way worse than you make him out to look.
Yeah, well, I guess of a little more, but also I don't know. I've been trying to play with some of those, or I guess there are layers to Bo as a character.
Mm-hmm.
Bo whines every single time he's told he's not allowed to shoot somebody.
Well, and I think that is like he has put on I guess, like, the character that he thinks he's
Yeah.
expected to play
Right.
as
So
a
Tim,
mercenary.
yeah.
That,
It
like,
doesn't.
he hung out with all these genuinely awful people.
It doesn't help that Eva treats him like that.
And
Right.
yeah, I guess that then he totally presents that front because he thinks, that that's what he's supposed to do to
Yeah.
some extent.
And
While
I
I
think
think his actual, but still not good way of viewing his job is that he has kept like a craftsman mentality about it. And I guess he did kind of hint on it in like our first session, where he still thinks of it the same way that he thinks about hunting. Which I guess, like I said, that's probably something that he needs to unpack someday.
yeah.
Of like, I'm very purposefully distancing myself from the fact that I'm killing people.
Yeah.
But, thinking about this craftsman mindset to it.
It's the way his prepubescent mind figured out to justify it
Mhm.
back in the day, and he's just stuck with that because it worked for him. Yeah, and I think you saying that, clarifying that definitely helps. That yeah, the way he's behaving in character is not necessarily his true and intended character, because I think Zeke has been similar. Danielle told me a couple times when we were discussing it, and she was bouncing ideas off me and thoughts about the whole dynamic. And when she was talking about how Robert was wanting less bloodthirst, and how she was surprised by how bloodthirsty Zeke had turned out to be. And I said, well, I may be operating on slightly more information because I worked more with Avery on building Zeke's background, but like both times, yeah, he has brought up twice, are we going to kill this guy? But I think in both situations, it's been fair, and it's been the pragmatic approach for Zeke to do that, because first was him hopping in the van with Bo, like, okay, we just set up some surveillance stuff, but like now we're following this guy. We're going to go off him because every interaction Zeke has had with Bo has been Bo either, getting ready to hurt somebody, getting ready to potentially hurt somebody, or talking about wanting to hurt somebody, or talking about how he's frustrated that he can't hurt somebody. So, Zeke's like, okay, well, Bo's the go hurt people guy, and I'm going off with him. So, like, here we go. I'm ready to kill somebody if that's what we got to do. Because Zeke's not above doing that.
Let me
if
just
that's
point of order. You're mostly right, but I don't think Zeke was intending to just kill this guy so much as he was willing to like break a kneecap or threaten his mother with the same if he had to. But
Yeah.
your assessment is pretty much dead on.
That's at least the spirit in which he was asking. He was asking, like, is that what we're off to go do right now? Less than like, all right, let's go murder this guy. Because that was kind of the impression Danielle had been getting, that like Zeke's just ready to murder people, or do something heinous to this guy, and tell him we're gonna kill his mom if he didn't sign this.
I think all of our characters have been fronting. Eve is certainly presenting herself differently than she is.
We've got the party, and then we've got the completely fake party that is the collection of all of the faces and fronts that every character is putting forward. And, depending on in which order those get unpacked, we might end up with 2 or 3 different variations of intermediate party that is some strange combination of real characters and the masks of characters. Oh, man. Wait, what? I can't quite read that, but that looks like a cyberpunk character about something about we're gonna have to kill this guy, and it's Bingo from Bluey.
Oh my goodness, it's tiny even when you pull up the full picture.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh my.
Oh my gosh.
That's hilarious. That is
I can't read it though.
I feel like it's actually, well, let me think. Honestly, well, yeah, I don't know. You could almost make an argument for the other way around too, being Bingo being like, well, I think we're gonna have to kill this guy, and the murder bot being like, oh, really? Okay, sure. Yeah, yeah, I guess we have to, if you say so. But yeah, that both definitely could fit depending on who you're talking about. Oh my.
It's got this great new meme format of this where it's like insert two of your favorite animated characters in this scene.
And it's those speech bubbles.
Mm-hmm. It's always those speech bubbles.
That's funny. Yeah, I hadn't caught that one. Yeah.
There was a terrible one that I saw for people talking about the end and the death, where it was a loyalist space marine talking to a guy. I think we're gonna have to kill Horace, man.
Oh no. Oh, well, so it sounds like we've established that we're all, and Danielle's conked, I'm assuming, but I think it's safe to say that she would be cool with that approach.
Okay.
And would probably, I'm guessing, I'm kind of thinking that Cherry would definitely be on the, I really don't know about this, like, if you guys think that's what you got to do, then fair enough. But I feel like I might need to hang back and sit this one out, or run interference or something. But I don't think I can do that.
Yeah.
Sort of thing, which could even be, and this is obviously up to Danielle, but I could imagine that even being the one of the things that nags on Eva to be like, oh well, I don't know, Cherry made a good point. Maybe I really don't want to do this. Is this really who I want to be?
I do think that it's entirely natural for Eva to come to that without any. And I kind of want it to, like, obviously there's going to be external influence there, but I still want her to come to that breakdown more or less on her own. I feel like it becomes a good establishing line and point for our group that if she's the captain and this is where she's drawing a tumultuous line, then that's where we are, and anything we want to do over that line, well, is going to be on our conscience without her knowing. I also think that would be interesting if later on, Bo does pull a Jane and goes and does something that the captain explicitly said not to.
Yeah.
But that's for after we've had more character development time to establish where our characters are, what they're fronting, and who they really are.
Yeah.
So
I got you.
if we could recap, it sounds like the suggest violence. Eva says, okay, we have no other options. We're doing this. Go, prepare, do it. Eva breaks down. Pete recognizes, and Pete and Eva have a touching conversation. We'll make sure that it's touching. I'll put that in my notes. Touching. And then Pete comes out and I'll let Robert decide how Pete handles approaching the rest of the group, but Eva will come out after that and expose her heart that she just can't do that. And then somebody comes up with a name of one of this guy's superiors that dropped, that showed up in the news recently, or something that the thinky folks and the conniving folks and the cunning folks, basically all of us, can seize upon to say that's our way out of this. Because at this point, also, Eve is going to start freaking out about, oh gosh, what is Mr. Gray going to do to us?
Mhm.
That's my recap of what I've taken away from this. Am I wrong?
What are you wrong about?
Oh, hey, babe, welcome back.
I'll send you the file so you can listen.
Oh, please.
Yeah, sorry, we realized a couple of minutes ago that you were probably passed out.
Well, I'm sorry I missed you being wrong. Continue.
I do like that the first thing upon waking up is assuming that me asking, am I wrong, comes to the assumption that I am wrong.
It's a rare enough occurrence. I was interested to know what it was about.
Well, I'll take that as a compliment. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I didn't quite process all of it, but yeah, the general thing about this being a way to introduce to both resolve the party dynamic issue and also introduce the alternative solution that hadn't been considered yet is good. I don't guess we established who is going to come up with the alternative or how, but that's something that could be discussed further.
Yeah, I mean, I think just it could be as simple as someone saw that Archbishop or whatever you call them, so and so is in town, and there's a tabloid about him having been corrupt. Obviously, it's a tabloid, so it's not true, but we try our luck with it.
Yeah.
The pinnacle of true information. Tabloids and dollar store romance novels.
Hey, no one said it was from the dollar store. That's the $1.25 store to you, sir.
Just
These are the
dollar
high
store.
tier Barnes and Noble. Get it on your Kindle romance novel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I hope
obviously,
you're working up our eventual and inevitable run-in with Jennifer Moon.
Jennifer Moons, two moons.
We
Or
still
more.
haven't figured out who she's mooning, but she's moons.
Or it could be a verb, yes. Mm-hmm.
That's just part of the mystery, the mystique around Jennifer Moons. She moons. How many moons? How does she moons?
How does she moons? That should be one of her book titles.
How does she
moons?
Yeah, I'm trying to keep up with
the title of an
future book
autobiography.
titles.
Yeah.
One of her characters has to be Moon Moon, of course.
No.
Sorry, no. Moon Moons.
I love that stupid little comic with Moon Moon, where Moon Moon first came about. So great.
Oh yeah. Dex, did we ever tell you about our daughter's name that our friend makes fun of us for? So the name Hannah literally means God's grace, but then her middle name is Grace. And so they were like, so you named your daughter Grace Grace. You gave her the biblical equivalent of Moon Moon. Like,
oh, I love it.
They'll still ask us, like, so how's Grace Grace doing? We're like, well.
Oh, it is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I enjoy it.
We still call her Grace Grace sometimes.
Oh, excuse me.
All right. Well, Danielle, while you were sleeping, we solved all of our problems, and we're ready to go forward.
Man, can I opt out of problem solving more often? It's like,
Oh,
hey,
man.
can I just like nope out of consciousness for a few minutes, and then when I wake up, all the problems are solved? That sounds great.
I really wish the world would work that way.
Really?
Yeah, we need that as
It'd
an
be like the sort of like the skip dialogue scenes.
We'd be like that movie Click.
There's a movie.
Oh yes, there is, and it has a
It'll wake
fantastic
you up,
lesson
don't
to
let
it.
Is it don't skip through the dialogue scenes?
Yep.
Yeah.
There's a little bit more to it, but yeah, that boils down.
Oh man.
It's actually a really good movie. It's Adam Sandler, if you like him.
Is this the one where he goes into a Bed Bath and Beyond section?
Yeah, he gets a remote control.
The universal remote, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Now I'm remembering the ads for this movie from like 2006.
It's a little bit old, yeah.
Older than Grace.
So is anyone going to tell me what problems you solved while I was asleep? Or
We dismembered that guy.
oh, okay. Well, that was quick.
Yeah, we just decided to be done with it. Move on.
You're
Yeah.
like, you know what? If you were dead, this problem wouldn't be a problem.
Irrelevant meme and out of character chat.
And now we're the leaders of our own mob.
Mr. Gray rewarded us by helping us start our own mob.
Yeah, no. The gist is that we bounced around a lot of feedback about ways to avoid similar frustration and confusion in the future, and streamline and clarify some of the fact-finding scenarios and stuff like that. Also discussed some how to, I guess, how to balance the party's tendencies towards violence, and like what balance the players wanted and how to accomplish it, with eventually kind of settling on a scenario, a scene where somebody, probably either Pete or Bo, is going to spearhead the decision or the idea to go ahead, go directly and rough up Bishop Pierce to get him to do the thing. But then, in the process of preparing for that,
There's one
and
important
should
detail.
say Eva,
Yes.
Eva decides, yes, that's what we'll do. Let's go for that. We're out of other options. Then, in the process of preparing for that, somehow or another, Eva slowly but surely realizes she's really not okay with that and is not going to be, feel good about that in the future, and ends up changing her mind and turning the party towards a different direction.
Can I offer
And
clarity on that last part there?
go for it.
Yeah. Less so that she starts to realize and changes her mind, and more so that she knows it's the wrong decision to begin with. And this was part of fronting. She knew it was the wrong decision, but she didn't want to fail this assignment, and she didn't want to fail her crew. And so she said confidently, "Yes, we'll do that. Go for it." But it's wearing on her, it's stressing her, and Pete recognizes that she's slowly breaking down and goes to talk to her about what's happening. And I promised a touching scene between Eva and Pete, where they talk, and she basically breaks down and says that she can't go through with this, she can't do it, and that's when we turn it around. And I want to make that clarification because again I find it a particularly good line in the sand for, you know, this is clearly where Eva's line stands.
Mm-hmm.
She tried to go forward with something she knew was wrong, and she couldn't, at least for this type of wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And that was what Robert and I talked about when we sidebarred, is if that seemed like something that would work for him with Pete, and kind of, you know, hits the bells that he wants, and he said that it does.
Nice.
So sorry, Ben, for jumping in there, but that
No, you're
part
fine.
about her knowing it was wrong from the beginning, that was important to me.
Yeah, that is important. Yeah, and I guess just to clarify, I did realize that I think I was not wording it very carefully, because I was thinking it was like her realizing that it was the wrong choice to go with this wrong choice, I guess. But yeah,
Right.
wasn't very clear about that.
Fair, fair.
So yeah, so I think we're on the same page. And Danielle, I told them I was pretty confident you would be cool with a scenario like that unfolding as a way to
Yeah.
resolve the issues.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm okay with that. Sounds like some good character building. So
Yeah.
Sure.
Definitely always for that.
always up for good character development. All of us getting to know our characters well. So I'm a
Yeah.
fan of that.
You betcha. I
What,
feel
Avery?
like
Oh, I didn't. You're good.
side thing.
I thought I heard Avery say something. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, he was probably talking off screen. I was gonna say, for one, I don't know that there's much more to discuss on all of that as a party. And it's kind of late to dive into any sort of gameplay. I think we were already talking about not doing that tonight.
Yeah.
So
You want to just
think this
wrap
would
up
be-
early?
yeah, I think this would be a good time to call it.
All right.
So we can go ahead and end the recording.
All right.
Also missed playing with you guys last week.
Yeah, definitely.
Just for the record, looking forward to next week already.
And I really I enjoyed getting to meet up and discuss, even though we didn't play any tonight. I found this return to somewhat of our routine refreshing.
Yeah, definitely. All right, well, I'll go ahead and end the recording now.
Okay.